Hey, what's up, guys? I am your solo host today for Sippin and Spillin over here at 3 Mississippi. Unfortunately, I got Syd sick, so sorry about that. She's doing all right. She got a little bit of a cold and kind of eating some broth and watching some TV and kind of relaxing. So um, I decided I would come out here and have a little chat with you guys myself. We'll see if I'm able to. Oh, my tractor tire is a little low. We'll see if I'm able to meet the bar, right? So I don't know if I've ever done a Sippin' and Spillin' episode by myself. I'll have to go back and look. I think we're on episode 71 now. And I know Syd has done a few by herself, and she's had Frankie with her for a few when I'm disposed or indisposed. But today it's me. And it's a beautiful day here in Mississippi. I mean, an absolutely beautiful day. It's probably 40, somewhere between 45 and 50 degrees, which seems really warm, actually. And the sun's out. Would have been a good day to be deer hunting, but I'm actually working today. It's Monday, and I just took a lunch break, decided to come out and film so that we weren't ignoring y'all, because we're trying to put one of these episodes out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're skipping Thursdays because Wednesdays are live, and it's just so much going on trying to get a Sippin' and Spillin' episode out. But anyway, some things to talk about. We got the chicken coop project hitting a stagnant zone right now. I mean, that's ultimately my fault, but I'm blaming it on the weather and on deer season. Every opportunity that I've had where the weather is perfect to work on the chicken coop has been during working hours, and so working hours for my day job. And then on the weekends it's been it's been nasty weather, and I just don't really like working in the rain. We've had a few opportunities where the weather was decent and we opted to deer hunt. Again, that's on me, but it's equally important because we're deer hunting for meat. I'm not a trophy deer hunter at all. In fact, we could talk about that a little bit. There's been a couple of people that have given me a hard time about the recent harvest on the property. It was a little spike buck, and not too many, and not too hard of a time, but I'm willing to talk about that. Everybody that's a hunter kind of has a different, perspective on what animals you should harvest, right? And it leads. I think that perspective comes from a couple places. It comes from, why are they hunting in the first place, right? And then what were they taught as a young hunter? People that they look up to and respect had an influence on them as a young hunter, and it kind of set the mindset for them for why they hunt. And unfortunately, a lot of people base the success of their hunt on the end result of the trophy that's hanging on the wall, rather than the end result of the nourishment that goes into their bodies. People are perfectly fine with trophy hunting when they don't have enough money to buy food, and then buying the cheapest commercially processed food that they can get in the meat aisle at Walmart to feed their family with. And look, I'm not going to beat those people up. That's they hunt for the same reason that some people play golf, right? They enjoy the hunt and they want to win, and their version of winning is something that they can show people, a trophy. And I have friends, I know people with that mentality, and I don't debate it or dispute it with them. If we got into a conversation, I'd be happy to have a gentleman's debate. But I certainly would never tell someone that they're wrong for their mentality on hunting unless they don't eat the meat in the end at all. If they just waste it, if they're just trophy hunting and then they don't even use the meat. To me, that's absolutely wasteful, and I would tell them that I feel that way. But the quality of that meat changes with the age of the animal, and the bigger bucks tend to not be as good a quality as meat. We've experienced that, and it just is what it is. So, look, if you hunt long enough, that old over the hill buck with an amazing rack will eventually present himself to you. And yes, if I ever kill that buck, I will have it shoulder mounted and hang it on the wall. By the way, when you shoulder mount a deer, you can actually cape the skin all the way up, into the neck, and still you don't lose any meat. That's all just a cast that they put in there. We would still eat that older buck, but why did I pass on what was probably, I think I know the deer. It was a little far away. I was looking through a kind of like a screen on the deer blind, and it was facing us when I was studying it. So I could see its antler, base, and I could tell that it came out to the outside of its ears. I've actually had what I think is that same deer look right at my deer camera multiple times, and just based on its shoulders and its neck and its overall body, and then the symmetrical, typical design of those antlers and where they were, I'm pretty sure I know that deer. We have several 8 points that I've caught on trail cams during the daytime, and with slightly different characteristics. I can pick them out. We've got one really good size 6 point. I think it's genetically inferior as far as antlers go, but it's a little bit older buck. But we have some nice deer on the property that a lot of people who deer hunt would take. They would take those deer. They may not shoulder mount them. They might do a European mount or whatever, but they want those antlers. That's what they want. And Syd was sitting in the blind with me, and that guy came out 200 yards from us, and she got a little bit of buck fever. It was her first time ever sitting in a deer blind, and she was like, shoot that deer. You got to shoot that deer. I was like, nah, I don't want to shoot that deer. And she said, well, what if another one doesn't come out? Well, then he will tomorrow, But we were hunting for meat, and that is why we hunt. And that, with the amount of deer we have on the property, I don't have to feed my family, a 2.5, 3-year-old buck. I don't have to. I can feed them a yearling all day long. We have plenty of them on the property. Now, so I passed on that deer. I didn't even try to line the rifle up on it and tempt myself, which is interesting because shortly after that, about the time I probably would have been lined up on him, he did turn broadside. And, I don't even want that temptation, because that was not the deer I wanted. So, to the mentality on, harvesting mature bucks versus harvesting, young bucks. When I was a kid, hunting was pretty much only about meat. There were a few people I knew that would brag about back then it was called the Hartford deer. They'd brag about that big buck that they caught on a they got a visual of it out there, and it was a swamp buck or whatever. But they, of course, they didn't kill it. Maybe once in a blue moon somebody did harvest a pretty good sized buck. But the deer herds, I think, were smaller when I was a kid. I think Fish and Wildlife has done an outstanding job managing deer herds, especially in Mississippi, and really bringing the herd back to more than a healthy size, an abundant size. So when I was a kid, what was frowned upon was killing does. You could get like one doe a year, I think, but you had to get bucks, and I don't remember what the rules were when I was a kid. It was like, they had to be at least a forked horn or whatever it was. Anyway, we were killing young bucks. We were killing young bucks. They tasted good. The older bucks were, they were more challenging to hunt, and for the hunter who wants to challenge himself, against the wits of a mature animal that has been hunted for several years, I totally understand that. I totally get that. I watch The Meat Eater. Frankie and I love that show. And that guy is a hunter. I mean, forget about it. He has got skills that only come from challenging yourself against very, very smart animals that have been hunted and have felt hunting pressure. Interestingly, though, he's also a very good conservationist, and I'll bet you he would agree with me. We'll probably never know because he'll never watch this, about harvesting the deer that I did harvest, and passing the deer that I did pass. Because while I think that he has killed some amazing trophy deer, he also is a meat eater and understands conservation of a herd. So, it was frowned upon to kill does when I was a kid because the deer herds were not as large, and one buck could impregnate 10 does, right? So you got to have the does if you want to have more deer. Large deer were fantasized about a little bit. People would talk about them, hardly ever kill them. But those forked horn to 6 point, I don't know where you're watching this from, but out here we count both sides in the east. You might call it a 3x3. We call it a 6 point, whatever. And a lot of those deer were 1.5 to 2 years old. And that's what we were hunting. But we were hunting for meat, and it was always exciting. It was always exciting to take a deer and to know that you just put a bunch of meat in the freezer. So that's the mentality that I'm trying to teach Frankie. She is going to be influenced by more than what I was influenced with. That's the reality of the world that we live in now. When I was a kid, you were influenced by the people that immediately surrounded you. I grew up, in a very rural area in East Tennessee, and it's not like we had neighbors all over the place that we could go hang out with. There was a small group of people that influenced me during that time frame of my life. And nowadays we have the internet, and that changes everything. Frankie can watch YouTube videos about trophy hunters, and that's going to impact how she feels about hunting to some extent. What's important to me is that what I'm teaching her is in alignment with how I believe, and that will have some impact on who she becomes, later in life as a hunter. We hunt for meat. If we don't need meat, if we are not going to be able to eat it, we are not going to hunt deer anyway. Nuisance animals is a different story. There's a guy down here in Mississippi, Yacht. He goes out and hunts nuisance animals, hogs, that are just tearing people's farms up and just rutting their fields out and destroying them. But he doesn't waste that meat. He actually donates that meat to families in need. So again, he's doing it for the right reasons all the way around, and then following through. And that the same thing for us. We are not going to hunt deer if we don't need the meat. Now, you might say, well, you don't need the meat. You have a job. You can go to the store and you can buy meat. Okay, if that's how you feel, then that's how you feel. And I'm not going to be able to, change your mind about that. But the way I feel is every level of self-sustainability that you can achieve is another level up, and any side hustle, and I don't even know how I feel about that term. That term's come up in the last, generation, and it's just become a common term, but it's common, so we're going to use it. Any side hustle that you can have that is going to financially improve your family's situation, as long as it's legal, don't be a drug dealer, is a good thing, right? Harvesting your own food from your own property is a side hustle, right? If I put 50 pounds of meat in the freezer from an animal that I harvested on my property, it cost me $1.70 for that 6.5 Creedmoor round. And yeah, you could factor in the cost of the gun and the scope and whatever, but over years, right? That's 50 pounds of meat that I don't have to take out of my family's bank account, dollar wise, and go buy from the store. That's extremely important. Before we bought this property, for like 7 years on our much smaller scale operation, prior to moving here, we almost raised 100% of our meat. We would, on a very rare occasion, go buy some really nice ribeyes from a local butcher to grill, or we would buy, some line caught salmon because we weren't raising fish. But for the most part, almost entirely, we ate protein that we raised. We had laying hens that laid all of our eggs. We had meat birds, Cornish, every year that we raised enough for us to eat. We also had a side business. We were selling them. We did a couple hundred a year. That was kind of one of the side hustles. And we raised turkeys. We raised ducks. We raised quail. We raised hogs. We raised goats. Syd was making goat cheese. We raised sheep. And when you factor in the cost of raising those animals, you can't factor your labor in because it's a lifestyle, right? We could have a debate about that. Somebody say, oh, when you factor your labor in, you were losing. Well, it's a lifestyle leading to self-sustainability. And if you don't live that lifestyle, then you can't do it. Simple as that. You can't watch a YouTube video on how to do this and then just say, okay, if the grid goes down, I got this. No, you incorporate, this lifestyle into your life, and then you continue to improve upon it. So, for that 7-year period there at the Crouch Ranch, before we moved here, we raised all our own meat, and the amount of money that we did not spend on meat over that 7-year period, I couldn't even guess. I couldn't even guess what it was. Some of that money did get spent on feed and fencing and infrastructure, but a lot of that money was saved and able to be put into the savings account, and be able to put into upgrades or things, buy a generator, things that we, that continue to lead towards, a better life that we were trying to live. And, so all that comes back around to where are we at right now in 3 Mississippi mentally, and what are we trying to achieve? And, hunting is a big part of that. We are trying to get back to, within a year or two of being here, to that place where we're not having to buy commercially grown meat from the grocery store. And more so, I mean, we have 45 acres here. There's so much more that we can do now than we could have done then. And we will. We have a lot of plans. Those plans take time. But we've been buying meat since we got here, and now it's deer season, and I can change something about my family's spending by harvesting deer. Of course I'm going to do that. I'm also teaching Frankie some very important things, and had a great time with my wife sitting in the deer stand. I thought it was actually awesome that we got a deer while she was with me in the deer stand. And I thought it was awesome that, a deer that I didn't want to harvest, a larger buck, presented himself, and we passed on it. And I thought it was awesome that she got buck fever, and she was like, you got to kill that deer. What if another one doesn't come out? I thought all of that was great. It was a great experience for us. It was probably led to some learning for her. 100% it led to some learning for Frankie. Even though she wasn't there, she was very involved in the conversations about it after the fact. And then, when that little spike presented himself, initially we thought it was a doe. And I had already said, look, what I'm willing to harvest is a doe, younger the better. And somebody was debating with me about aging deer and kind of got a little bitey with me about you can only age deer by their teeth and you're completely wrong and whatever. That's fine. There are things you can tell about a deer, by its body. When it's thinner and when its back is kind of sloped from the shoulders to the rump, and its head is smaller and longer and its neck is, these are all signs that it's a younger deer, regardless of antlers. For ducks and bows, huh? All right, that might be the title of this video, for ducks and bows. Anyway, for bucks and does, their body changes as they get older. And no, you can't age class a deer completely accurately from sitting in a deer blind looking at it, 200 yards out. But as the back flattens out and it gets bulkier, especially towards the front from the back, the neck gets a little bigger, the head blocks out. These are all signs that the deer's getting older. Really old deer will have a bit of a sway in their back, kind of like a horse. Their legs no longer look disproportionately long. They actually look, properly proportioned for the body. These are all signs, that about where a deer's age is. So, and then, of course, genetics play a big part. You can have, a genetically imperfect deer by the standards of, just what is normal, that throws that off in its muscle structure, in its back, in its belly line, in its legs, in its antlers. So no, it's not a perfect science, right? But I'm looking at those things and I saw this deer and I thought it was a doe and it was definitely young. This was a yearling, I think. And I said, okay, that's the one we're going to harvest. And then when it finally stepped out of the wood line and I could see that spike, I said, okay, well, it's a buck, but it's a young buck. It's still in the category that I said I was going to harvest. Now, in our area, there are antler restrictions. I believe a 10-inch minimum inside spread or a 13-inch minimum beam on at least one side. And, a deer's not going to let you run out there with a tape measure, right? So you're looking for, those antlers to at least be kind of as wide as the inside of the ears to give you an idea that you got a 10-inch inside spread, or for at least one of those beams, if it turns its head kind of sideways, to come back out to about parallel with its eye, right? However, if you are a landowner in our region and you're hunting on your own land, you can kill one deer that's an antlered buck that does not meet those requirements. It doesn't matter. It could be any hardened antler. Boom, you can put them in the freezer. And if you're a youth under 15, all three of your bucks can meet those requirements. So, or can be exempt from those antler requirements. So, look, the Fish and Game is really, really good at deer herd management. They have improved and basically brought back this deer herd down here over the last couple of decades. And, they create these requirements almost entirely for the purpose of deer herd management. They're taking a lot of things into consideration. Each landowner then kind of has their own idea, while still following those rules, obviously. They have their own idea of the deer herd in their specific pocket, right? I have 45 acres. I have no deer that live on my property. Anybody that thinks that they're keeping deer on 45 acres, anybody that thinks they're keeping deer on 200 acres is wrong. But in this pocket, the neighboring landowners, there's 70 acres over there, there's 30 acres over there, there's like 600 acres over there, all owned by the same person. There's some wildlife management land over there. Within this pocket, there is a deer herd that generally stays within this pocket, although occasionally they travel. And in this pocket, we have a lot of young bucks and a lot of does, a lot of them. So for me, that's perfect because that lines right up with, I want the deer that are going to taste the best and be the best to feed my family. So I want to hunt does, young does. And I want, if presented with a buck, I want it to be a young buck. Will I ever trophy hunt? Well, no. I will never hunt for a trophy, okay? That doesn't mean that I will never hang a trophy on the wall. The two things are very different. That 8-point that presented himself to me that I passed on, why did I pass on him? Well, I passed on him because he wasn't big enough to justify a shoulder mount and hang on the wall. And he wasn't the deer that was going to taste the best for my family. Okay? If he had been a 5.5-year-old, non-typical, drop point, crazy lunker, yeah, I would have harvested him. We still would have eaten every bit of him. It would not have been the best deer meat that we've eaten. We'd have made a lot of grind out of it. Syd does a lot of soups, especially during the winter. We might have canned some of it. We would not have wasted any of it. But I would have hung that on the wall, absolutely. That's not the same thing as trophy hunting. Trophy hunting to me is when you go out looking for the trophy. So, Frankie's first deer, we may very well spend the money out of the family's bank account to hang it on the wall. And again, that's not trophy hunting. She's hunting for meat. And, you know, we may very well hang the proof of her successes on the wall as a trophy. Trophies are not a bad thing, but they can be a bad thing if the trophy is the only reason you do what you do, you know, whether that's hunting or whether that's sports. If all you're after is the trophy and you're not after the experience and the camaraderie and the teamwork and the, you know, the learning, then, you know, that's where trophies are a problem in sports too. But anyway, I feel like I've rambled for quite a while here. I have no idea for how long, but probably long enough. I probably got some of y'all getting bored. So I think my lunch break's over, and I am going to get back in there and get logged in and get back to work. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I apologize that I got Syd sick and she did not join us for Sippin and Spillin today. You know, hopefully she doesn't have it for very long. She's got a pretty strong immune system. She works out, she eats right, so she'll probably kick this pretty quick. But again, thanks for hanging out, guys. Don't forget to check out 3 Mississippi, the big channel where we actually do stuff and not just talk. You can go see that deer hunting video if you haven't seen it yet, where Syd went with me, and we harvested that young buck that is now sitting on ice, aging in a cooler, and it's going to bring my family some amazing sustenance. Yeah, like the video, subscribe, hang out, comment, ask me some questions. We'll do our best to answer them. And have a great day, guys. Have a blessed day.